Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar. I'm very pleased to be presenting the sponsors for today, OB10, and one of their key clients, Hewlett-Packard. So this webinar is incredibly well attended today and really is very representative of the mindset of the market right now, which is that e-invoicing is front of mind for a lot of finance shared services leaders, and organizations with high volumes of invoices are really looking with almost a sense of urgency to eliminate their invoices through electronic invoicing. So I'm delighted to be presenting OB10 and their client HP. And HP has been using the OB10 network for a while now, so they are in a very strong place to be sharing their experience with you. So we're going to be looking at how a global technology giant has converted 1.6 million invoices to electronic. So we have the HP story today. So I extend you a very warm welcome. My name is Susie West, and I set up sharedserviceslink.com in 2007, specifically to help people in financial services improve performance by adopting technologies like OB10 and by eliminating manual processes and by organizing their processes differently so that they could really create much better value within their financial services operation. We do this through extending best practice information, through webinars such as this one today, through conferences, which I'm very pleased to say OB10 very regularly sponsors and is present at, through our masterclasses, reports, and also online at sharedserviceslink.com. So please do go online afterwards, become a member. It is free. We have well over 1,000 members now, all enjoying the information that we push out to them, and do become a member yourself. So what does the next 60 minutes look like? What we're going to be talking about is how this session works and what the intention of this session is. And then I'll be passing over to our two presenters for the day. We'll be then taking your questions in the last 10 minutes and looking to close on the hour. So how does this session work? It's a very straightforward platform. Many of you have used it before. If you do have any technical queries, we do have technical support on the line to help you. But really importantly, everyone's realizing now, or a lot of people are realizing now, that e-invoicing has to be somewhere on their list of priorities. And as I said, very much front of mind for a lot of shared services leaders. But there are still concerns and doubts and questions. So do use this opportunity to get those questions addressed and those concerns addressed. How you do that is you submit the questions to me via your GoToWebinar panel, and I will take those questions and put them to our presenters in the last 10 minutes of this webinar. So do utilize this opportunity, please. It is a two-way dialogue. And the sooner you get your question to me, the higher the chance of it being asked, so do bear that in mind. So let's briefly touch on the intention of this session before I move to our first poll question of the webinar. So many of you will remember from the webinar that we ran in January that we asked you a number of questions regarding your e-invoicing adoption, and really the results were incredibly stark. We asked what the penetration of e-invoicing was within your current accounts payable environment, and 65% of respondents said that today they only process between 0 and 10% of invoices electronically. So I think we'll all agree that's a lot of people not processing not a lot of invoices electronically. When I asked how many invoices, what invoice penetration are you looking to have, electronic invoice penetration are you looking to have in 12 months' time, the 65% dropped considerably to 8%. So only 8% of people on the line and this was a large group. We're talking about nearly 100 people participating in this survey. 8% of them said that they were looking to process between 0 and 10% electronically in 12 months' time. So you can see a huge jump here, which is really very, very impressive indeed. And also, looking at it from the other side, while the poll showed that only 11% of companies at that time, so we're talking January 2011, processed more than 60% of invoices electronically, this, in their opinion, was set to jump to 34% in 12 months' time. So there is a huge groundswell at the moment, and shared services leaders are absolutely cottoning on to the fact that e-invoicing has direct benefits, of course, which absolutely fits in with their process improvement strategies, their cost reduction strategies, but also what comes from e-invoicing as a result is really very compelling. So e-invoicing is an enabler for other gains outside the obvious to happen within a shared services environment. So this really is why we're having this webinar today. So let's move to our first poll question of the day and just gauge an idea of what kind of organizations we have on the webinar in terms of volumes. You'll be seeing the poll question very, very shortly. How many invoices do you process today on an annual basis? So these are transactions, purchase invoices only, please, ladies and gentlemen, but all invoices, all invoice types, so EDI invoices, e-invoices, paper invoices. How many invoices, purchase invoices, come into your environment on an annual basis today? We do look to get over 70% of people responding. We're currently at 50%, so please, if you haven't ticked the box most appropriate to you, do so. So that less than 50%, between 50 and 150,000, sorry, less than 50,000 invoices, between 50,000 and 150,000, between 150,000 and 300,000, or more than 300,000. 63% of you have voted. Just wait for a few more, and I'll be closing the polls in 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look at the responses there. You can see the results coming up on your slide now, that for just under 45% of you, 44% of you process more than 300,000 invoices. So we're really joined today by organizations who have high volumes of invoices, and everyone will agree that that the higher the number of invoices you have, the more compelling it is to do electronic invoicing. The business case is greater, the need is greater. So thank you very much for that. And now I'd like to introduce our first presenter for today, Stefan Foroszewski, founder of OB10 and a gentleman who is responsible for global business development. So over to you, please, Stefan.
Thank you, Susie. Okay, Susie's already mentioned that e-invoicing is high on the agenda. I think we all understand that it is much, much cheaper to process an electronic invoice than a paper invoice. There are wide ranges of studies that describe how much more efficient electronic invoicing is. In fact, the governments and indeed the European Commission have been taking quite a close look at this, and they've estimated huge savings over the next 5 years across Europe alone. So electronic invoicing helps you improve your efficiency. It helps you pay your suppliers on time, which of course is crucial in today's environment. By paying on time, you can improve your trade terms and you can meet your business targets. Increasingly, electronic invoicing is on the agenda for organizations as part of their corporate social responsibility targets. E-invoicing is green. It makes a contribution to the environment and helps you with your carbon savings. So companies adopt OB10 electronic invoicing for a variety of reasons. We give guaranteed tax compliance in multiple territories around the world. We enable suppliers in many different countries to be able to join the network and submit their electronic invoices. Of course, we provide cost savings to both buyers and suppliers The invoice data is more accurate, which supports management reporting and enables on-time payments to suppliers. We've mentioned already the savings by the streamlining of your invoice processing. We process any data format from any supplier anywhere in the world, and we manipulate that data to be fed directly into the buyer's accounting system, as we'll describe later. We've been doing this for many years. We have developed best practices, and we provide project and program management for your electronic invoicing campaigns. We have a strong network of suppliers. Each month, many thousands of suppliers are joining OB10. And of course, once again, we see benefits to the environment. So more and more large companies around the world are adopting electronic invoicing. And that's invoicing not just for domestic transactions, but invoices from across borders, from multiple territories where you're sourcing your goods and services. So many thousands of companies are connected across the globe to OB10, all transacting across the OB10 network. What we'll see later when Peter describes the HP experience, many suppliers are not just connected to Hewlett-Packard, but also to many other customers in the same environment. So once the supplier is enabled with OB10, they can transact electronically with any buyer that is connected to OB10. So we exchange the data from the supplier's machine directly into the customer's accounts payable system. So invoices don't start their life as paper. They are truly electronic and move from machine to machine. Using our technology, we're able to take the data in any format from the supplier, manipulate that data, and integrate fully into any ERP system in the buyer's environment. We are tax compliant not only in Europe but also in North America and territories in Asia Pacific. We create on behalf of the supplier the tax compliant invoice. We check it to make sure that it has all the components that constitute a valid VAT invoice before processing it and sending it on to the buyer. We have an online archive that stores each of those invoices, so buyers and suppliers can at any time, 24/7, access the archive, download copies of their invoices. Our invoices, where required, are digitally signed in accordance with the requirements of the local territory. Of course, not all countries require digital signing, but we see this as being a key component of guaranteeing the authenticity and the integrity of the electronic invoice. We have a portal. OB Portal is there for both buyers and suppliers. They can create reports, look at their invoice history, and even see the status of the invoice in the buyer's accounting systems. So electronic invoicing works. Suppliers connect to OB10 either by direct integration with their accounting system. So we fully integrate and take the data in a full file format. Alternatively, smaller suppliers can use the portal, where they simply key the invoice data into the portal application. In both circumstances, the invoice goes through a series of compliance checks to check firstly that the invoice is compliant with the local regulations for that country. Secondly, to confirm that it is compliant with what the buyer expects to receive. So different buyers might require different sorts of data on invoices. For example, some buyers might insist that there are purchase order numbers on invoices. Some buyers might insist that there are contact names or email addresses on invoices. OB10 checks all of that data prior to creating the electronic invoice. Once the invoice has satisfied all of the compliance checks, then an image is created, it's digitally signed, and that image is delivered to the buyer along with an electronic data file that can be uploaded directly to the ERP or accounting system. And simultaneously to all of that, the electronic invoice is stored in the archive for later access between buyers and suppliers. So it's not just about a piece of technology. OB10 technology is software as a service. It's entirely hosted. There is no requirement for the installation of any software or hardware at either the buyer or the supplier. We have customers in 137 different countries, and that's supported by our multinational team. It's important that when you speak to suppliers in different countries, you talk to those suppliers in their language. You contract with them under the rules and regulations of that territory and in their local language. For buyers, we provide program management where we help you work upon the best practices that we've developed over the years. We work with you on the technical implementation, so we integrate fully with your electronic ERP system. We help you with your supplier enrollment plans. We agree targets, adoption targets of which suppliers will join and when. And we also help you with your internal and external communications. Internal communications are often as important as the external communications. So I'd like to point out that one of the key components and the most important elements of electronic invoicing is supplier participation. If suppliers don't join the service, then the service simply won't work. You must have your suppliers participating. So suppliers in multiple territories can join OB10, as I've described, using the integrated solution or by using the portal. Following on from the full implementation, we provide ongoing support and project management with a support facilities based in both Asia, in Europe and in the US. So with that, I'll hand over to Susie to talk about our second poll before she passes on to Peter.
Thank you very much indeed, Stefan. So our second poll question for the day, which will be appearing on your screen very shortly. Please tick the box which is most appropriate to you. Do you have a clear business goals and objectives in place to remove paper from accounts payable? So today, do you have clear business goals and objectives in place to remove paper from accounts payable? Yes, you do. The business case is very much in place. The business case is currently being built and defined. Or no, you've not yet assessed the goals and objectives and don't yet have a solid business case. 59% of you responded. Please, do help us make these results more meaningful. If you haven't responded, please do so. And I will be showing the results in 3, 2, 1. Closing down the poll. Let's have a look at the responses. So you'll be seeing very shortly on your screen what the results are. We've got about only 28% of you, so 1/3 of you, saying that you don't have any kind of business case in place yet. So that's very encouraging. Really feeds into the results that we got from the survey that we did, or the poll that we did on a webinar in January. 34% of you do have a business case in place, and hopefully that's telling you to move forward. And 38% of you have a business case which is currently being defined. So I hope that was useful for you. I'd now like to introduce from Hewlett-Packard, Peter Downie, who is the Global Invoice Automation Lead at HP BPO. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you very much, Susie. So first of all, let me thank everyone for dialing in today. And what I intend to share with everyone is the HP story on invoice automation, specifically within the P2P environment and the supplier invoices that we receive. The focus will be both on, from an HP internal shared service organization perspective, but also then touching on the BPO story in terms of invoice automation for our clients within our BPO organization. What we're going to look at today is the role and success of invoice automation, and specifically also how e-invoicing as a receipt mechanism fits within that program. So looking at the agenda, as mentioned, which I will touch on the overall automation story within HP, and also then touch on the critical success factors, and then moving on to the benefits, current focus, and that we're looking at currently within HP and HP BPO, and also touching on some of the key lessons that we have learned. So moving into our invoice automation story, before I go into a bit more detail on that, I just wanted to highlight and introduce HP as an organization. So Hewlett Packard as a corporate organization probably doesn't need too much introduction to everyone on the line. But we are officially now the largest technology company in the world, obviously providing a whole range of product and technology services. We are now doing business in over 170 countries and do over 300,000 employees within HP corporate organization. So moving on, just in terms of introduction, what I do want to do is just to introduce everyone HP's shared service organization and our BPO organization, which provide F&A services, but not just F&A. We also provide services in other business areas as well. And we would be split these days into our BPO trade organization, which provides F&A services to our clients, as well as then the internal HP shared service organization, which provides services to the internal HP organizations. As a total, we have over 40 clients across all major industries, and we deal and provide services in over 20 foreign languages, and I have and actually deal with on an annual basis over 20 million supplier invoices. As you can see here from the chart, we do have a whole range of both onshore centers and global delivery centers dotted across the world, where we would clearly these days have our onshore centers focusing on front-end activities like scanning, and then dealing with the majority of our back-end processes within our global delivery centers. And finally, on a processing back-end side, we would have one or two regional delivery centers where key local language activities are still held. So that really is the from a global perspective of our BPO organization. So moving forward, just to introduce the subject of invoice automation, what I would like to share is our shared services journey and how we have evolved as an organization in that respect, and how invoice automation and the key focus technology was added to that. So looking at the HP accounts payable process, the P2P process back in 1990, we very much had centralized local AP organizations dotted throughout the world. This led into 1995 to regional consolidation in terms of putting those local resources into 4 regionally consolidated business centers. And then we moved then to a more offshore global consolidation in 2000, where we moved to leverage on the offshore centers around the world, and maximize the amount of transactional processing in those offshore centers, and obviously focusing to be able to increase the labor arbitrage that we could get from transactions that we were posting in the back end part of our process. Throughout then to going on to 2005 and 2010, the key focus, once we had leveraged our labor arbitrage opportunities, was to introduce technology more into our overall shared services organization. And that started first within kind of digitalization, so automation of individual processes, and then throughout towards 2010 has really been a key focus on trying to automate end-to-end processes, both internally within our HP organization as well as for our BPO clients, to really transform their processes and increase the level of end-to-end automation. So BPO as an organization, in terms of providing P2P services within F&A for our clients, was created in 2003, very much leveraging on the internal shared services organization that we had developed. But really, back in looking at in terms of time of things, back in 2000, that was when we had moved to the footprint of having offshore global business centers, and very much had standardized our processes and within the internal HP account, and also had already started to consolidate our ERP back-end solutions, and also and cut down the ERP instances that we employed. And that's very when we came into the focus and started to really focus on moving forward and looking at, as mentioned before, additional technology opportunities, and specifically invoice automation. So looking at our initial vision on automation in 2000, we were at that stage there that we had already received or moved forward and actually been pushed mainly from our procurement organization to reach quite a high level of EDI point-to-point invoices that were already coming in. So back in 2000, we were already up to 30% of our overall invoices were coming through as a point-to-point EDI solutions. We also at that stage had already defined and created two main workflow solutions. So they were HP in-house built workflow solutions, which allowed us, which we had created auto routing for auto copying of that invoice data then from our workflows into unnecessary ERP instances. And back in that time, as mentioned, the vision or the focus had already been on creating or maximizing the level of invoices that were being received via EDI. And very much they were, at that stage, the full range of messages, not just the invoice was coming in through EDI, but we were also receiving the full procurement suite of messages coming through EDI. But I think at that stage, and looking at the historical picture and the vision graph here, and we can see we at that stage already had a large mention in terms of on the green part of the section of the pyramid in terms of EDI, full digitization, end-to-end invoice, both POs, ASNs, goods receipts, for example, as well as invoices that were being received electronically in that end-to-end process. But we also, as you represented here in the dark orange box, the remaining was very much dealt with manually in terms of paper, all the documents, and also in terms of the invoices were still coming in on paper. And that's when the vision back in 2000 was to look at an alternative solution and to be able to bring over as a vision here the second part in terms of C part, automation, digitization in the full end-to-end process, and really focus on just being able to receive the invoices electronically from our suppliers. The reason we did that was there was at that stage the full kind of understanding that we really would not be able to expect all our suppliers, so from inventory and non-inventory, to be able to send invoices directly via EDI. So we really saw it as a strategic approach where EDI and e-invoicing, which was then seen as the best solution to cover that gap, could coexist, and we would be able to provide that for as an option for different suppliers. So the real focus was then on the invoicing to really get to that second part of the vision in terms of the part of digitalization, the yellow section. And the focus there in terms of invoicing at that stage was that we really needed to partner with a third-party network which would allow us a global compliance capability that we would be able to then provide as a solution for all the remaining of our suppliers. So in terms of as many countries globally as possible, and really for all commodities and all suppliers across the board, regardless of the commodity or the invoice volume that they were sending to us. So in terms of key drivers at that stage of what we were really looking at and why we were looking to focus on invoice automation, it was clear, of course, that process efficiency was one of the key areas, as well as the process cost savings that we could get out of invoice automation and specifically invoicing. But we were also aware that some of the non-tangible savings that were out there, although we couldn't quantify them at that stage, but we were aware that obviously this will provide us greater auditability, increased business intelligence in terms of some of the data and reports that we were able to get from invoice automation, and also in terms of improved cash management due to getting the invoices quickly booked into our solution, and of course better on-time payments. The goals at that stage was to convert electronic to 80% of our entire invoice receipt within an HP shared service organization. And as mentioned before, the key requirements was to have a solution that was fully tax compliant and available and viable for as many HP suppliers, for all those suppliers that we had already hadn't already set up or would choose to set up through the more direct EDI or self-billing approach. In terms of challenges, so here I think were some of the key challenges that we identified at the start of our project, and the ones in green are ones that then proved really throughout the program not to be an issue and really didn't encounter as a challenge, although we had initially thought so. The ones in amber would be ones that we then did encounter as challenges, but really were able to overcome them quite easily. So in terms of tax compliance, using the OB10 work and compliance sign-off, we were able to sign off with our individual tax departments within HP and get the go-ahead to release, and obviously successfully used the solution now for many years. On the ROI perspective as well, and there's initial challenge, initial worry, which to begin with we saw as a slight issue in terms of understanding our real return on investment, because of our inability to really, at an early stage, increase the volume of suppliers coming on board. But it's something I'll touch on in a minute in terms of the program approach. But once we moved to the program approach, we were able to bring a lot more suppliers on board and also increase the level of automation that we were getting in the back end. And so the challenge of return on investment really did disappear at that stage. Supplier acceptance and enrollment were obviously challenges that we did see throughout the process. And obviously when we started 2003, the whole acceptance and knowledge from a supplier perspective, both of OB10 as a network, but also specifically invoicing, was far less than it is today. And certainly in the areas that we roll out to with new countries these days, but also with our BPO clients, really that becomes less and less of a challenge because there are so many more suppliers these days now on the network and already set up to e-invoice. So moving forward, and just to give an idea of really where we are in terms of HP, in terms of our global experience and where we are and what we've been able to achieve throughout the years. As was mentioned, we started off with e-invoicing specifically in 2003, but that was also part of an overall invoice automation program, which looked on the HP side to increase the overall levels of automation or of electronic invoice receipt. And so we focused on EDI as well as self-billing, OB10, e-invoicing, and P-card. Okay. Latterly, we've been able to, and as mentioned before, leverage on the HP BPO side and provide a market offering now, which we employ already for some of our key clients, and are rolling out an offering to our remaining client base, and including as part of our key service offerings going forward in new deals. And that really does offer a combination of HP technology, so in terms of our internal EDI solution, as well as then a key partnership with OB10 e-invoicing to provide the invoicing part for our clients. So in terms of our global experience internally within HP and where we've been able to reach in terms of invoice automation as a global concept, but also in terms of e-invoicing, currently process annually 8.1 million invoices, of which 6.4 million so nearly 80% of those invoices are received electronically. Okay, either whether that may be coming through e-invoicing through OB10 network, or also through EDI, or also self-billing. So as mentioned, we already had an early start in terms of EDI, and we're now up to nearly 50% of invoices coming through electronically globally through EDI, point to point, and 10% self-billing, which really would be focused more on a US entity on the inventory side, which is very specific areas where we have a very close control of our suppliers' feedback and data and information, specifically around the price management side, which allows us to do self-billing. And then the full rest, in terms of the rest of the suppliers that are not available for EDI or ERS, are really where we focus then on e-invoicing and OB10. And you can see, I think we touched or provided as a soundbite for this presentation that we'd reached 1.6 million, but that has in fact increased. And internally, we are now on a 1.8 million run rate in terms of receiving invoices via the OB10 solution. It down to receiving invoices for just about 30,000 suppliers. Within a span, receiving those invoices for buyer countries of a total of 25 invoices, which really does span North and Central America, Europe, and Asia Pacific regions. So just moving forward then, in terms of, to understand and provide a bit of information on how we really got to achieve that very great level of success in terms of our HV invoice automation program, I would like to share some of the key successes around that. And I think this slide really shows the journey that we have moved from 2003 specifically on the invoicing side, and how we changed from what was initial project view in terms of setting up the architecture and process design to be able to set up and receive invoices electronically from all our suppliers via the OB10 network, and then also run through the country-by-country sign-off that we required. And we did that, but we then realized by 2005 that we really needed to move to a more program approach to increase the number of country rollouts that we could do and the supply enrollment support within that to really maximize the number of suppliers that we had for each country, but also a key focus on the automation, so the levels of automation that we could maximize in the back end, the back office, to ensure that we really could get the levels of automation and, of course, the savings and process efficiencies that we had expected to get initially within our initial vision. So you can see on the right-hand side the effect of moving to that program approach, both in terms of the overall invoicing volume. So we mentioned we're up to the 1.8 million mark in 2011 now, but obviously that shows how we moved to that. And obviously within 2005, when we moved to the program approach, bringing in global program managers, we were able to really increase the volume of the invoices that we were receiving through the OB10 network. And that was done through additional rollouts for countries, but also maximizing the number of suppliers we had on board and increasing those within the countries that we had ordered to. Also, as mentioned, one of the key focuses of that program team was to increase the levels of automation within our back office. And so you'll see here 3 different measures in terms of the routing, which would be routing the data and the images into our workflow, the auto data entry of those into our workflow, and also then the full end-to-end posting into our ERP system. And all of those, in terms of fallout management, massively increased when we put the program team in, which was dedicated to focus at that area and really increase the level of automation. So I won't go through the rollouts in terms of the country, but that we rolled out internally. You can see that here, and we'll have access to that in the slide set afterwards. But we really did then roll out through the different countries and the different regions progressively between 2003 and 2011, and this is an ongoing process. There are still one or two countries where OB10 already has the tax compliance that from a priority perspective HP hasn't rolled out to internally. and also as any more countries get added, as is a standard continuous process from that side, when more of those countries get added globally, then they will also be rolled out internally within HP. Something we also do on the HP BPO side for our clients. On the BPO side, as mentioned in 2010, was when we focused on leveraging on the internal invoice automation story of HP, and so launched our service offering. And in 2010 and 2011, we've been working from our initial client base to really interest and bring them on with EDI and e-invoicing through OB10 as part of our invoice automation program, and that's something we will continue as part of our overall transformation for our remaining clients and any new deals going forward. Just to touch on, to move forward and to highlight some of the key strategies that we've been able to look at, and looking back, we realize were key areas for our success, and things that, you know, in some cases we had already set up and already taken consideration of to begin with. And I think others are areas that we really kind of moved forward and focused on and improved as we went. And I think some of those key focuses would be, number one here would be the organizational framework, so really the importance of finance and procurement working hand to hand, and really getting the top-down message, not just you know, in terms of support from a high-level procurement, but also right the way down to our organization, procurement organization. That's something that really helped and something we developed along the way. And also within that was this idea of ensuring that whoever spoke at all different stages, whether it be with a finance organization, with our customer response center, or our vendor data maintenance team, or also procurement, both in terms of the contract negotiations or renegotiations, at every step of the way, e-invoicing and the importance of e-invoicing was mentioned to our suppliers. So that continuous communication strategy, both internally within our organization as well as external to our suppliers at every step of the way, was certainly a key success. I think also the focus we already had initially of the economies of scales, of understanding that we really wanted to roll out e-invoicing to as many suppliers as we possibly could globally, and avoiding, where possible, scope fragmentation in terms of taking out certain suppliers or taking out certain commodities or countries for that matter. It really allowed us to reach levels of return on investment that we had planned to begin with, and really focus on and avoid having to do additional administration, which can happen from scope fragmentation. And I think the final point here in terms of the key strategy, which already touched on, showing the result of that, was the program management. So putting in place a key program team to control the supply enrollment, working with OB10, but also ensuring the improving the processes in the back end, was certainly a key strategy for our success. In terms of benefits, I mean, obviously the benefits we have seen have been very wide-ranging, and obviously on the HP side, one of the key benefits has allowed us to leverage on the internal automation story that we've seen within within our internal shared service organization for HP, leverage on that and provide a key solution for our service, for our clients within our BPO framework, and that's something that we have today, as mentioned, in terms of a solution that can provide or receive any invoices electronically in any framework, but also leverage on the program management skills that we have learned internally within HP. But in terms of the benefits that we have directly seen internally, in terms of the benefits from e-invoicing, I think, I mean, there have been many both tangible and intangible benefits that HP has got out of that. And some of those we were aware of initially, and others that, you know, we maybe had some idea of, but wouldn't really be able to put any quantitative figure to them. And so on the tangible side, obviously we've seen considerable increases in efficiency of our overall processes and P2P cost savings, or improved on-time payments. So we these days see over 25% improvement if an invoice is received electronically through invoicing rather than if it is received on paper. And also on the discount realization, we have over 30% improvement in terms of being able to reach those early discounts already agreed upon if we the invoice electronically over paper. And we, of course, seen many improvements in terms of auditability and also, of course, environmental benefits, which is a key HP corporate objective these days. And obviously, the large number of paper invoices that we have been able to save from this process has allowed us to really achieve and provide considerable benefits on a corporate level. But some of the intangible and real value-add benefits down the bottom here, which I won't go into too much detail, but really are the areas that we have seen and we weren't really aware of it as initial at the outset, in terms of increased supplier satisfaction, better contract negotiation power for a procurement organization, PO coverage increase, and also greater spend management control in our treasury organization have all been additional value-add benefits that we've been able to get from invoice automation and specifically from receiving invoices. So just to finish up on what I would like to share with you is a brief idea of where we are currently focused within HP. And I think, Stephen already showed you internally the considerable volume of electronic invoices we already have and we already receive from many suppliers across the board, up to nearly 80% of invoices received electronically. But we really then look to go and move forward and increase where possible, the real value of those invoices, and so that's one of the final part, as it were, the cherry on the top, which is really to increase the automation levels from receiving invoices electronically. And so the focus internally is then on the PO convert services to use the ability to both convert the data that we have created on PO invoices to make it easier for some of those remaining suppliers to use the solution. And also network interoperations, so where over 10 are signing with other networks, just to allow those one or two suppliers that will be more deemed as mid-volume suppliers that may be resisting our intentions to get them on board for the remaining areas. But really is, as mentioned, is the final area we have been able to get a large volume supplies already on, with the key focuses that we've already put in place in terms of 1.8 million invoices already, and really is the final effort is to attract some of the remaining suppliers that are not sending invoices electronically in the countries where we have moved to. Also, in terms of the supplier portal, that's one of the focuses in terms of one-stop self-help tool. We use different tools across the board for suppliers to use, but we are looking to bring that through into one focus, one supplier portal. And also, obviously, dynamic discounting, which is a key area in terms of cash management, and that we are also looking to align and provide as a value-add service internally to our suppliers. I think also then that links with the current focus on the HP BPO side, which really means that where we're focusing on rolling out for existing client base, but also adding additional value-add services from e-invoicing, like dynamic discounting, and also the supplier portal, which really does bring additional value-add to our clients. Then just to wrap up then in terms of the key lessons we've learned and some of the things that if we look back on some of the things that we maybe didn't think of to begin with or realize the full importance of at the outset. And I think they would be in terms of looking at the full business value add in terms of the business case, something that we weren't aware of and didn't build into to begin with. We really did focus on the tangible headcount savings that we were looking to get out of the process. But some of the additional value adds that we have been able to get that I touched on earlier really are something that you should look to try and include within business cases from the outset. And also, I think one of the key successes we had was our knowledge of the architecture and our processes. design. And this is something was created because we had already created our own internal HP workflows, and we're fully aware of how we needed to get our data, electronic data, coming in from the various different sources and maximize the automation levels from them. But certainly looking back, we see that that was a key lesson that we were able to achieve, because we had a very good understanding of our IT architecture and how we wanted to deal with the data that was coming in from the different invoice automation elements of the program. And finally, a key lesson, and I really don't get bored of mentioning over and over again, was the program approach that we moved to be able to manage not just the number of suppliers coming on board and increase the enrollment and countries that we released to, but also the numbers and the levels of automation that we were getting in the back end of our process. So really, I think I would like to wrap up on that last point and pass back to Susie to do the final poll and touch on any questions and answers time that we may have left over. Thank you, Susie.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Peter. So poll appearing on your screen now, how do you process invoices today? We've had a very clear view of how HP process them. Do you process invoices within a central shared services center or organization clusters of centers globally, on a distributed or decentralized basis, a combination of both, or other? So please do respond to this quickly, which will, if you do so, then we can close this poll down and have plenty of time for questions. So how do you process invoices today? Centrally, through a central shared service organization or centralized finance operation, distributed basis, i.e. decentralized, combination of both, or other? Closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look at those results. It's, again, very compelling. We have 63% of you using centralized operations shared services organization to process your invoices. So you are in a very, very good place to get going with your e-invoicing project indeed. So thank you very much. Now I'd like to pass back to Stefan, please, for a summary.
Okay, Susie, thank you very much, and thank you so much to Peter for a great story there. Just to summarize the things we've talked about, electronic invoicing, it's not just about replacing paper, it's about improving the whole process and resulting savings and benefits. It's not just about technology, it's about doing it in multiple territories and doing it in a tax-compliant fashion. Peter's mentioned several times, program management is essential. We'll provide you with best practices and help manage you through the technical implementation. But I think underlying all of that, again, a message from Peter, 30,000 suppliers. Supplier enrollment is absolutely critical to the success of your program. So thank you for listening to me. I'll pass you back to Susie now, who will deal with the questions.
Thank you very much to both of you, Stefan and Peter. So first question, a real mixture of questions coming through. Peter, in your opinion, could you just clarify what the difference is as far as HP is concerned between EDI and OB10?
Yeah, so I mean, as we mentioned, as I mentioned earlier, we very much do see that what is key is having a clear strategical vision to begin with, and we really saw that EDI could coexist with the invoicing. And so EDI, we would see in our scenario, was more point-to-point EDI, and very much was focused on receiving or setting that up for key suppliers in the large volume in the inventory part of our organization. And very much we were able to set up a large volume, as I touched upon earlier, and have increased that number throughout the years. But we realized that EDI did not allow us to provide a solution that was available for all our suppliers, for a large number of suppliers, just key suppliers, but with large volumes. So really much the focus then was on e-invoicing, which would allow an approach that would be available to more suppliers and be tax compliant in more countries, or in all the countries that there is required or available within the OB10 network, but also provide a network approach which meant that suppliers didn't just have the opportunity to get on board, which was the case in a more point-to-point EDI approach, and just sending invoices to HP, but in a network approach going through OB10, had the opportunity to send invoices not just to HP, but to other customers of theirs, obviously increasing the business case for suppliers and allowing more suppliers to get on board.
Okay, good, thank you. We've got a question here again. There's a lot of questions to work through, so if you wouldn't mind responding. And briefly, Peter, how did HP approach countries and decide which ones go first? Was it volume or was it compliancy?
Well, initially, it was compliance. So obviously, at that stage, there were certain countries that weren't compliant. So obviously, we couldn't look at them then, but was compliant. We obviously then prioritized in terms of volume of invoices and worked through about those. So that was a priority. But obviously, what was compliant at that stage is different to what's compliant now.
Good, thank you. Okay, and regarding, we've got a couple of questions coming through about the supplier fees that OB10 charges. So I'll start off with you, Peter, and then I will put this to Stefan. Costs for suppliers to be involved in the OB10 network and sending of invoices. How has that proved to be an obstacle to your project in any way?
Well, I think not a major one. Obviously showing the large volume that we've been able to get in terms of 1.8 million, we've been able to overcome a whole range of, supplier pushbacks in terms of moving and changing to a different solution, of which really the supplier costs are only one of those that are often mentioned by suppliers. We really have been able to convince suppliers of the need and importance and the value add that they were going to be able to get out of it. And so that meant really that the supplier charging wasn't seen as an issue in most cases. And also the fact that suppliers were able to send invoices to the network to more clients obviously helps that business case.
Stefan, anything that you would like to add to that?
Yeah, I'd like to comment that suppliers actually pay to process and send paper invoices. Suppliers very quickly see the benefits of electronic invoicing because the transaction is processed exceptionally quickly. It goes end to end in a matter of minutes, and we guarantee the delivery. So it's not just about the price of the transaction. It eliminates invoices getting lost in the post. They are assured that their customers have received their invoices. And of course, by receiving invoices quickly, there's a better chance of the invoice getting paid on time. So we consistently see that suppliers have to do less chasing, a point that Peter made earlier, and also that suppliers see prompt payment predominant in an electronic invoicing environment.
Thank you. Another question that we've got, does OB10 actually handle any paper?
The vast majority of our transactions are electronic. We will never guarantee getting to 100% electronic. That's difficult to do in today's environment. So we do have a solution for the residual paper volumes, which, depending on the success of the campaign, maybe 10 or 15% of the transaction volume, and we can process those paper transactions. So the answer to that is yes.
Okay, and staying with the paper theme, if I may, this is a question for you, Peter. When you have invoices coming through electronically and you've onboarded the suppliers to the OB10 e-invoicing network, are there any instances where you actually receive a paper duplicate from them which is accidentally paid?
From the client, so something we very much focus on to prevent that from happening. Because it can as part of the process, but within Link 2 we have a very clear process which is run just before the payment run, which looks at the final part of the duplicate payments, possible duplicate payments, and really that does pick up there any duplicate payments. So we have various sort of parts of the process where we have devices to stop that happening, both within our workflow and also, as mentioned there, the final part of it, which is technology or a script which is run to look at our payments and ensure that we're really not going to make any duplicate payments. So you know, that there is the possibility, but we really do put in those business controls at different stages of our process to prevent that from happening.
Okay, good. And one final question that we've got time for. A lot of questions coming through, again, on the general theme of how HP actually kind of convinced suppliers to come on board. Did you work very closely with sourcing, and was your message to suppliers mandatory? Could you just give us some pointers on how
Sure.
on how you did that? Yeah.
Certainly, there wasn't mandatory message to begin with. We moved to that kind of more in 2006, and that did help things. I think that wasn't in all regions. So, you know, we were able to clarify, but the focus, and as I mentioned, one of the key lessons is that we started off with key high-level procurement involvement, but not really all the way down within the organization. That's what we started to do within our program, with the help of our program teams, and we really encouraged and worked very closely with our procurement organization to help support the process, and that's really what saw the turnaround working with the suppliers. We had the message there, but it's not just the mandatory message, it's all the communication that goes to the suppliers every step of the way, both in terms of the contracts, terms and conditions, and also communication in terms of renegotiations that really helps that. So it's key kind of hand-to-hand working with the procurement organization to really get that message out to suppliers. So as I say, we didn't have that, but we moved on to that.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm afraid we are out of time, which is a shame because you can tell we could talk about this for at least another hour. On your screen you are invited to participate in a raffle. I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar that OB10 works with sharedserviceslink.com as a sponsor on a number of our events, and they will be present and sponsoring the Turning Up Purchase to Pay conference and also the e-invoicing Europe conference, both taking place in London. OB10 has arranged with us that there are a couple of free passes that they have access to, and they will be drawing a raffle, and they're inviting you to enter a raffle to win one of those free places. So you're invited to tick the box. Which one would you prefer to win a ticket to? Turning Up Purchase to Pay to Attain Touchless Processing, taking place in June 21st to 23rd in London, or e-invoicing Europe, taking place from the 5th to the 7th of July in London. Please do tick a box. These tickets are worth about £2,000 to £3,000, and if they will prove to be the best conference that you have ever attended in your working life. I'm very confident about that. So please do tick one of those boxes. I'm going to close that down in 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much to Peter and to Stefan. That was very useful, and thank you for your time and attention, and we look forward to greeting you on our next set of webinars, which are taking place in May. So thank you.